Before you put backstory on the page, follow these 3 rules. But first, you should know what backstory actually is and what purpose it serves on the page. Don't forget to hit subscribe because we're offering a lot of great content on this channel, and we're also going to do some live classes, so turn on notifications so that you know when we're going to offer the next one. So what is backstory exactly? It is the history of your character. It's all the things that came before that moment in time in the book. If you filled out the character planning worksheet that I gave you in the character series that I did, then you know a lot of this backstory about the character. You know some of their deep emotional wounds. You know where they came from, where they grew up.
I don't know.
You really should know that going into your book. At least have a vague idea of it. I don't necessarily do a ton of character planning before I start. I do have a vague idea of how old my character is, why they're in the job they're in, some of their deep emotional wounds from their past. That really helps me inform whether I'm going to put backstory on the page or not. Backstory has a purpose. Help the reader understand, root for, and bond with the character. Emotional bond is what makes readers talk about your book, keep coming back for more of your books, and tell other people they absolutely must read that book. Think about the last book you read and you told a friend they had to read it because you loved it so much.
What do you want a book for?
I bet it probably wasn't because the author described car chases so well. It was probably because you really bonded with that character and cared about what happened to them. And a lot of that comes from having a really effective backstory and using it in a compelling way. So use this 3-part test to kind of figure out if you're using it right or not. Number 1, was it triggered? A lot of us don't go around just thinking about our history randomly. For me, my mother died many years ago, but I don't necessarily think about her every 5 minutes in my regular day-to-day life. But I do think about her if a song that she sang when I was a kid comes on the radio, or if I smell fresh baked bread because she baked bread every weekend. Things like that will trigger a memory of my mother because that specific moment connects to a specific moment in my history. So you want to make sure that it is triggered by an event in the current plot. For your writing exercise, I'd like you to look at a scene that you have where you've got backstory in it, or you know you need to add backstory in there. And I want you to come up with the trigger for it. What makes the character think of that thing in their past at that exact moment? There has to be a trigger. Number 2, are you using it in the right place? So if your character's in the middle of a gunfight, they're kind of busy trying to not die.
My God.
They're not necessarily going to go and think about their history, even if that moment is triggered in their head. They may have a flashing thought, like one line, but they're not going to go 5 paragraphs into a memory when they're in the middle of something really crucial and needing their attention. So you got to look at whether you're putting it into the right place. Look at your page. Look at the action on your page. Is there a lot going on? It's not really a time when somebody would pause and think. When somebody pauses and thinks in the book, everything comes to a stop. It's just like standing there in a conversation with somebody and all of a sudden they start thinking. And you're just like, just stand here and watch you? Because it's kind of weird and awkward. It's the same thing that happens in your book. So when characters think about their backstory, the rest of the action is coming to a halt and people are just standing there basically waiting for your character to re-engage with the plot. So you want to make sure that you don't put in too much backstory, or that you don't put it in at a time when normally the character would just be moving forward and not thinking about the past. For your writing exercise, I want you to take a passage of backstory that is probably too long. A lot of us write a ton of it and we really don't need that much. And I want you to act out the scene with the character, what they're doing, and look at how long that pause is where the character is thinking about the past. Is the world moving on and your character is just standing there thinking? It's not very interesting. So I want you to cut that backstory in half, drill down to the essential parts of it. And number 3, is it relevant, impactful, and believable? Those 3 words are sort of my litmus test for whether the backstory works. Relevant, impactful, believable. For instance, if you have a male character, men don't tend to go around thinking about their feelings or really processing emotional moments in their past. They tend to be more kind of analytical and they want to assess what the problem is and solve. Women will tend to talk a little bit more about their emotions and delve into that more in their thoughts and in their conversations. The backstory for a male character is probably going to be different than your female characters. I know that all characters can be a little bit different and they don't necessarily have to fit a stereotype, but you want to look at who your character is. For instance, how Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory would think about his history is completely different from how Penny would, because they're totally different characters that approach the world in completely different ways. Impactful means it needs to have an impact on the plot. I've said it before and I will say it 10,000 times as you're watching this channel. Every word in your book needs to move the plot forward. There are no wasted words. There are no pages that you just throw in just to fill up your word count. Don't waste the reader's time. Make sure that that backstory is impactful to the reader and to the story. And third, is it relevant? Is it showing up at the right time, on the right page, with the right circumstances, with the right trigger? And does it have some kind of a link back to the internal plot? Internal plot is probably the most difficult thing to learn in writing. Go back and watch the internal plot videos if you haven't seen them already. This is the emotional plot. This is the plot that is the most critical. When you want to build that emotional connection, the the internal plot is the place to do it. The backstory is the history of that internal plot. These are all the things that came before that make the character feel, act, worry in the plot right now. Even if it's something as simple as being afraid of the dark, sometimes that's just because this kid was locked in a closet by accident when he was 5. So that's a backstory thing. And when your character is in a dark closet and has to hold crap together for a little while, that will trigger that memory of being locked in the closet at 5. And they will have to somehow overcome that fear and that trauma moment instilled in them and get through this current moment in the plot. So that's what I mean about it being relevant and impactful and believable. If you have a character that's all of a sudden afraid of the dark and doesn't have any reason for that in their past, then it's not going to be believable to the reader, and it's not going to be as impactful, and it certainly won't be relevant. For your writing exercise, to look at your scene wherever you have some backstory and ask yourself, how is it believable? How is it impactful? And how is it relevant to the plot? Because if you can really nail that down, then you know if you're putting your backstory in the right place. Come to our live writing sprints on Fridays where you can actually ask me in real time whatever is going on with your plot. I appreciate you watching so much, and I will see you on the other side of the page.